I'm getting my syllabus up. All right. Welcome to microbiology. Before we begin, are there any questions? Where are you? There you are. Let me share my screen here. All right, you should be able to see my screen now. Um, this is showing you our Canvas webpage. You should take a look at it. At the beginning, I've got general course information. There's an article you should read about the class. There's the syllabus. I'll talk about that in a minute. Here's a link for if you need student or technical help. Frequently, students have trouble with getting uh, Respondus Lockdown Browser, a program we need to take the exam, online exam. They have trouble getting it to work. You need to click this link if you have trouble getting it to work, because this link gives you places where you can get help. Students often request help from me, and I'm sorry, I'm not a computer expert. I'm not going to be able to get Respondus Lockdown Browser to work on your computer. And all I'm going to be able to do is tell you should contact the Clark Computer Help Desk, the IT department, or contact Respondus Lockdown Browser people themselves to get help. Normally, there's one student every other term who has trouble getting the programs to work. There's two actually, Lockdown Browser and Respondus Monitor. And all they need to do is change one setting on their computer. And the computer help desk at Clark is excellent at getting uh, you help and getting it running on your computer. I have no idea what the settings would even be you need to change. So, like I said, this would be very helpful for you. It also has technical help and student help for other purposes as well. There's modifying your Canvas site so that you can get instant communication when I change something about my Canvas site. Here's my YouTube website. I'll talk a little bit about that. Biosafety information for students and physicians. That's more of importance for the students who actually go into a microbiology lab and they will be exposed to microorganisms. You will be taking this class through Zoom or through my YouTube website, in which case you will never be exposed to a microorganism. So this is not terribly important for you. There's a link to textbook chapters. I've got the first three chapters of our textbook here, and then all the chapter summaries for all the other chapters that we will use. And that's mainly for students who have trouble getting the book, to give them a little bit of time to get the information they need from the book, from this website, until they get the book. So you do need to buy the book. You cannot simply use this web page. And like I said, only the first three chapters are up here. Here's a link for student discussions. This is a link for you. It's actually something that a student suggested to me many years ago, and I thought it was a good idea. So this is some place for you guys to talk among yourselves. You can use it to, for example, form a study group. And I'm going to encourage you to use it. If you use it by January 17th, I will give you 1 point of extra credit. And I guess by January 17th, what I'm asking you to do is to state whether you want our labs to be graded one time, as in the first week's lab, or graded two times, as in the second week's labs. And if you state yes or no on that question by January 17th, I'll give you an extra credit point. There's a link about Zoom. There's the Zoom invitation I emailed to you, and obviously you got to the class, so you probably don't need the Zoom invitation, but That's what that was for, and that's the document I sent to you. There are actually three ways to get into Zoom. You can use the link I sent to you in the email. You can also scroll down here to open up the Zoom link, and hopefully this works for you. I'm not a student, so I don't really know. It worked for me. Um, and then click on, I don't know if you were to say start and end, but probably not because you're not an instructor, but it'll be something like begin the class or log into the website, something like that. And then the third way you can get in is actually log into www.zoom.com, put in the course information and the password, which I think is Archaea, and then you can get to our class. And I've got the course information and the password in the Zoom invitation I sent to you, or you can get it from right here. And there's something you should take a look at. The lockdown browser requirements, what you need to get lockdown browser to work on your system. We will be taking all of our exams using lockdown browser and Respondus monitor. So you should read this. And you'll have to, if you don't have lockdown browser already on your system, you'll need to download it. And this tells you how to do it. Download instructions. I'm not getting everything here. Oh, it tells you what you need to have on your system to get these programs to work. Essentially, you're going to need either a complete computer or a laptop to get these programs to work. For attending the class, you don't need that. You can use an iPad or a notepad, and you don't even need a camera or a monitor, but you would need a phone to log into the class to comment during the class or that. But you can't use that for the exams. For the exams, you do need to have a camera. You do need to have a monitor. You also need to have a complete computer or a laptop. I've decided that iPads are not good enough for sending me the information about whether a student is actively cheating or taking the exam for real. And so I've decided to disallow use of an iPad. And there are exceptions. You can contact me if you would like an exception, and I'll tell you what the exceptions are, what you need to do to get an exception. All right, then there's the avoiding plagiarism tutorial and the quiz. Go through this information here. You need to complete all items. There are actually two plagiarism quizzes, but they're mini quizzes. So they're about one quiz. And that has to be done by January 10th. I think it's not 9:59, 11:59, but let me check on that. Yep, 11:59 p.m., January 10th. Because this is just a plagiarism quiz, I will allow you to do it later, but I do want it done by January 10th. You must get 100% on both plagiarism quizzes, or else you'll get 0 on the infectious disease project, which is a 100-point lab project. All right. And then, oops, you don't have that. I can remove that now. You wouldn't see it, but I don't need that. And then it's divided into lectures by week, followed by lab by week. And then the whole thing goes week 2 lecture, week 2 lab, etc. Any questions about the web page? There are some extra credit assignments. Obviously, I've already mentioned one. You can get 1 point by answering the student discussions. You can get, it's either 3 or 4 points for sending me a picture. 3 points. Uh, no one will ever see this picture. I'll simply put it in my grade book. I found that the best way for me to learn your names is when I'm putting your grades in. If I see your smiling faces next to your score I'm putting in, I will begin learning your names. And that's my best way for me to learn the name. So that's why that's an extra credit assignment. If you don't have a picture you can send, it needs to be a digital picture, just go to someone who has a phone. Almost everyone has a phone. Take a picture, have them email it to you, and then uh, put it in this assignment. No one will ever see the picture except for me. That's the first one. And then there's the extra credit study sheet. Another extra credit assignment. I think I've got that already down here. Question is, can I find it? Yeah, I'm just going to download it. I'm not finding it. This is worth 6 points, 3 points for a tab containing your study time and your daily schedule. You do need to fill in your entirely daily schedule on the first tab, like 7 a.m. if you're sleeping, and before that, just put sleep. You don't need to be too detailed. At 8 a.m., you can just put um, wake and get ready for the day. At 9 a.m., going into work or whatever. And then from 9 a.m. to, I don't know, 3 p.m., you're at work. That's all you need to do. Um, if you have personal time, just put down personal time or family time. Put down something like that. So it doesn't need to be too detailed, but I do need a complete daily schedule. And then on log 1, put your time you plan to study for week 1 for microbiology. So let's say you plan to study for an hour from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Put it in there on Tuesday. And then do that for Thursday if that's when you're planning on study. And then let's say you're being really dedicated. You're planning to study for microbiology from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. Kind of overdoing it, but just put it in there. And that's all you need to do for log 1. For log 2, this is your uh, times you plan to spend studying for microbiology for week 2. If it's the same as week 1, all you need to do here is put week 1 and all weeks. Okay, but if you need week 1 and week 2, go ahead and put in log 2. And then there's a log 3. I've never had anyone use it. That's for week 3. And if you need more weeks, just put in this plus here, make another week for the study time. Any questions about any of that? You'll get 3 points, I think. Where is that? 3 points for your daily schedule and 3 points for your study schedule. Any question about any of that? For the study schedule for microbiology. The purpose of this is just to get you to think about when you plan to study. I will look at it to grade it, but the only comment I give will be if someone is studying less than is normally required by students in microbiology. I'll say maybe you should take the course at a time when you can plan on spending more time studying. But other than that, you'll still get your points for it. But that's the only comment I'll do. And I don't usually give that many comments either. Well, I guess I'll leave that open for the lab. All right, so those are three extra credit assignments. There will be, I think, about two more. And then we come into a note here, make sure you take Play G quiz. There's two of them by this week. Let me show you the schedule here. So in the syllabus, I blow that up a little. At the very back page of the syllabus, there's the tentative course schedule. And in the first column, we got the week. So week 1, January 6th to the 10th, meaning Tuesday to Saturday. This is what we're going to be talking in the lecture is this column. Technology session syllabus, tips for success. I need to talk about that. Scientific vocabulary, you'll learn a lot of vocabulary in microbiology. And then eventually we'll get to chapter 1, which includes part of chapter 10. And then the next column, laboratory. For this week, we'll discuss lab 00 today, and then lab 01. Both labs are due, meaning the worksheet for lab 00 and lab 01 are due 8 a.m. Friday. I will take a look at that and turn in to Clark, the registrar's office. It has to be turned in by 5 p.m. Friday. Who's attending and who's not? And how I'm going to do that is by checking if you turned in lab 00 and lab 01. If you have, you will not be dropped from the class. If you do not turn in lab 00 and lab 01 by 8 a.m. Friday, you will be dropped from the class. Any questions about any of that? So those two assignments are due this week. There's also the environmental quiz. I need to talk about that. And then two plagiarism quizzes due this week. And then there's a lecture assignment due this week. And that's not on here, but it is on the bottom here. But most lecture and labs will have a worksheet that is due at Saturday of 11:59 p.m. of the weekend session. The due dates, which are exceptions like Lab 0 and Lab 01, are due 8 a.m. Friday. They're on the schedule. Any questions about any of that? All right, the environmental quiz is due 8 a.m. Friday. This is to get you to make sure you have Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor downloaded on your computer and got them up and running. If you have a laptop checked out from Clark College, my understanding is they've already put those programs on the laptop, and so you do not need to download it. Furthermore, if you do download the programs, they will not work because you need to work with the programs that Clark College put on the computer. All right, then one final reminder, you must achieve 100% on both plagiarism quizzes in order to get points for the infectious disease project. If you do not get 100% on both plagiarism quizzes, you get 0 on the infectious disease project. The infectious disease project is worth 100 points. Any question about any of that? Now, the schedule here, as well as the web page in Canvas tells you when the assignments are due. You can check the calendar also. It does have the schedule of when assignments are due, but I notice there's a whole bunch of garbage in the calendar as well. And I don't know where that garbage came from. Like it has a whole bunch of Zoom lab classes and lecture classes that I never put in here, and I don't know where they came from. And on top of that, they're wrong. Any question about that? This one only has 3 on that page, but that one has like 5 on the page. I can't seem to get that. It's 5 on the page, and they're I need to pull them off, and I did it for the first 2 weeks, but I haven't done it after the next 2 weeks. And I don't know where these came from. I never put them up here. Any questions about anything? All right. Let's close that down. I think that's it for the web page. Let's talk a little bit about the study guide. If you click on the study guide, it will have the objectives at the top of the page. Chapter 1, objectives. Scroll down a little bit. I know this might be hard to see because I'm running it in Canvas. So chapter 1, objectives, the microbial world and you. All of your quiz questions will come from the objectives. However, the objectives are not something that's easily a yes or no question. Like it says, first objective, explain what is a microbe. What is a microorganism? 2, explain what is meant by the term pathogenic. Are most microorganisms pathogenic? Actually, that second one is an easy question, but the others are not. Something that is pathogenic is something that is a microbe that can cause disease. I haven't discussed what a microbe is. We'll talk about that later. And then are most microorganisms pathogenic? This is actually an easy one. And that is most microorganisms are not pathogenic. Only a few percentage of all possible microbes are pathogenic. Any question about any of that? All right. And then you scroll down, it'll have the lecture information. Well, let's go past the objectives to chapter 10. In the notes, chapter 1 notes, the microbial world and you. So this has the lecture notes in, what do they call that? Outline form. It's not in a slide format. Any question about any of that? So you can use this to study. And I have all of them set up like that, meaning chapter 1 study guide with chapter 1 and 10 in there. Because like I stated, chapter 10 will be covered, or at least part of it, with chapter 1. And let's scroll down here. There's chapter 2 study guide. All right, any questions? So let's talk about the syllabus. This class will be remote. We will be meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays for lecture from 5 o'clock to about 6:20, and then the lab from 6:30 to 8:20. No, actually about 8 o'clock. I'll end it at 8. If you are not able to attend the Zoom session live, you can view the Zoom session on my YouTube website. And you'll notice Firefox cannot open this page. That's because it's going outside of Canvas and Canvas will not open it. But you see this link here? You click on it. It'll then send you out of Canvas to my YouTube website. Boy, this is taking a long time. And these are some from last term. So the lecture and the labs will eventually be here. There's a lab. They will not be up immediately because I need to have YouTube add, what is that, text messages for whatever is spoken, and that takes time. And then I won't do it until probably after the lab. But if I do not get the lecture and the lab up within 24 hours, please send me an email as a reminder to post the Zoom sessions on my website because sometimes I forget. And if you want to see it, just send me an email and then I'll get it up. Hopefully, I won't forget, but occasionally, every term, I always forget occasionally. So just give me a reminder. Guess I want to leave that. Don't need that. Don't need that. If by chance I am not recording something, let me check here. The only way I can tell if I'm recording is this little red dot right there. So if you ever see I'm not recording something and I'm going ahead with the lesson, please let me know that I'm not recording and then I'll start recording. Because when I'm sharing my screen, all I get is that little red dot. Now, obviously, I can see that I'm recording here, but then you can't see my screen, so let me share my screen. So if you see I'm not recording the screen, please let me know. Any questions about any of that? Normally, whenever I just start the class, I have it set to default to record, so usually I do record. But occasionally I might log into the class early and then shut off the record because I don't want to record nothing. And occasionally I've forgotten that I'm not recording and we'll start the lecture. And so if you see that, please let me know. Any question about any of that? All right, let's go back to the syllabus. I do have a clark.edu email. I would prefer you not to use it because I get a bunch of junk email at this website. And so I'm only going to check it about twice a week. So if you want something quickly, don't send it to this email. Send it to the Canvas email. I'll check the Canvas email at least every other day, if not every day, but at least every other day. So I prefer you to use the Canvas email. I do have an office and a mail stop, meaning where they send my mail, but I'm not going to be on campus this quarter. So for office hours, I will arrange it online. And a good time to do it is either after the lab or if you don't mind other students listening in on the discussion during the lab, meaning after I stop talking in the lab and then uh, allow you students to work on the lab while I'm staying there to answer any questions. Any question about any of that? All right, I'll let you read about the textbook, materials, and other resources. Optional text. Let me do state that you can get the textbook copy as well as a photographic atlas, an optional text in the course reserve in the library. I don't remember how long you can check it out. You can check it out for at least a couple of hours. You might be able to check it out for a day, I'm not sure, but you can check it out. Um, I'll let you read about everything else here. Course description, student course outcomes, course policies and suggestions. Here's one. If you're ill, contact me and I'll help you keep on track. Please contact me prior to any due dates to make arrangements for late work. If you contact me after the due date, you may get the late penalty. Prepare for class, consult the schedule frequently, read the material before the relevant session. This class will be very busy. You should have the labs read before you do the lab. And review the material before exams. Attendance and participation will not be taken in this class except for the first week, and that is I'll figure out who turned in lab 00 and lab 01. And if you don't do it by Friday at 8 a.m., you will be dropped from the course. There's a strong correlation between attendance, attitude, and the student's final grade. In this class, I'm going to be explaining complex subject matter, but it may not be clear to you from reading the textbook and the notes. It's also clear to me who's skipping class or skipping viewing the online recordings, and these students are usually confused about assignments. They're usually confused about the lab. So I do encourage you to either attend the Zoom sessions or view the Zoom sessions on my YouTube website. And if you do not view it or attend, I will know who you are, so I do know. And I know who's turned in assignments, I know who's turned in quizzes, so I can tell who's following the class. And students who have problems with the class, if you ask a question like, I don't understand this assignment, and I know you haven't been attending the lab, maybe not attending the lecture, I will simply refer you to the Zoom session for when the assignment was discussed. If you want to earn a good grade, come to class, take notes, ask questions, pay attention during class, and then review the material on your own. It's best to review the material within 24 hours and then add to your notes. If you wait longer than 24 hours, your short-term memory will be gone and you won't be able to add to your notes. So what you should do is actually take skimpy notes, review them, and add to the notes. Online quizzes have an assigned due date. You only have 24 hours to take the quiz. If missed, they may not be made up. Quizzes may be taken, will not be allowed to be taken late after the answers become publicly available. They become publicly available about 2 days after the due date of the quiz. This is a policy of the microbiology class to reduce cheating, by the way. It's not a policy I've instituted. Any question about any of that? All right, artificial intelligence, AI, is allowed in this class except for quizzes. Can't use AI, obviously, to answer a question on a quiz. If you use AI, you must state it, put it in quotes, even if you write it in your own words, and then state where you got the information from. So you're quoting the AI. Any questions about that? Same as if you quoted a person, quote the AI. So AI use can be used in this class, but state it. I was documenting how frequently AI is being used in this class. It's currently used by more than 50% of the students. I imagine eventually about 100% of the students will be using AI. It's not that high yet. It's higher than 50%. I'm not sure how high it is yet, but it's not 100% use yet. Like I stated, you can't use AI for the quizzes, but you can use it in this class. But you do need to state it, put it in quotes, and where you got it from. Some student responsibilities. I'll let you read about wearing masks. You're expected to either attend the Zoom sessions or view them later on my YouTube site. And that's both for the lecture and the lab. I expect you to do the reading assignments, to do the class assignments, the quizzes, turn them in by the due date. If you do not meet these expectations, I will be notified of all of the above, except obviously the reading assignments. I won't know if you've actually done the readings on your own. But if you don't do these things, you may become confused in the class, and then you'll have trouble with some big assignments. You should pre-read the lab modules and then the assignments before the assignments are due. Know the due dates of assignments. They're in the syllabus, they're on Canvas. If there's an error in an assignment, I will follow what's in the syllabus. Meaning if the Canvas webpage has a different due date than the syllabus, I will follow the syllabus. You can point out the error to me. And by the way, if you ever point out an error to me, I'll give you 1 point of extra credit. I haven't given that extra credit actually for many years now. But if you do find an error in something on my webpage, something on a quiz, something on something I've written, go ahead and point it out to me. I'll give you an extra credit point. Any question about any of that?
Does that include spelling mistakes?
It does not include spelling mistakes, but you can point them out to me too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. No, I'm talking about a scientific error.
Understandable. I had to go where I could, see if I could get something out of there. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, hopefully I don't have too many spelling mistakes, but I do have a spell checker, like see YouTube here, it's coming up red. That means that's not really a word and it isn't a real word, it's a website. So that's why it's marked there. So hopefully I don't have anything on this syllabus, but we'll see. By the way, if you have another instructor, you may not want to point out their errors, but with me, I'll accept pointing out the error and give you an extra credit point. You should obtain all materials. If you miss class, it's your responsibility to find out what you've missed. Keep all papers until the final grade is given. That way, if there's a argument about what your grade should be, you've got the proof to um, back it up. You must abide by the student code of conduct, especially with respect for academic honesty issues. Cheating and plagiarism are not allowed at school. Failure to do this, you will be penalized. Meaning, if I catch you plagiarizing, your assignment will be penalized. You could even get 0% on that paper. Laboratory safety rules must be followed. It's not quite as applicable on an online class, but you do need to learn about them. All interactions must follow cordial, businesslike, professional interactions. This includes student to student interactions, student to instructor interaction, and instructor to student interactions. This includes communications, emails. Everything should be phrased in a positive, non confrontational, non-offensive language. We all must be respectful, even if we strongly disagree. And generally, I'll just say no politics, no religious discussions in the class. And that will hopefully reduce a lot of the areas that students can disagree in. Instructor responsibilities. I will try to respond to Canvas emails within 48 hours. Now realize it may be only a response saying something like, I got your message and I will look into it and get back to you, but I should do that within 48 hours. Meaning, if it's a long question, like you question something about a quiz, I'm going to have to take a look at that quiz answer, take a look at what the true answer would be, change the potential grade, and then get back to you. And that may take longer than 48 hours. If you send it to clark.edu email, I will only respond to that about once, well, every half a week, so twice a week. I'll try to have assignments graded within a week of the due date. Now realize that is not applying to the two big assignments, which both of these assignments, it takes me days to grade the assignments. Not one day, I'm talking about days to grade everyone's assignment. And that's because it takes at least 10 minutes to grade one paper. And there's going to be 20 papers. You do the math. What is that? 200 minutes. And so it's going to take me days to get the two big lab assignments graded. That's the infectious disease paper and the unknown report. So those may take longer than a week when they're due. All other assignments, I should get them more or less done within a week. Now that's for the first lab assignment. If the class votes to have two labs, the second lab will not be graded until probably late in the term. The reason being is I will always give priority to the first grading of the lab. And so after week two's lab is graded, which that one does have two labs, even if the class votes no, it will be graded two times. The second grading will be bumped by the third week's labs, their first grading. So I won't grade the second week's lab second grading until after I've graded the third week's first lab grading. And then that will be bumped once again by the fourth week's first lab grading. And so that's why the second grading of the labs may happen late in the term. So that I just can't say when I'll get them graded. I'll get it graded whenever I have time to get the second lab graded. Any question about any of that? So the second grading of the lab may be very late. Course withdrawal, I'll let you read about that. Late assignments, all work is due on the due date. The penalty for late assignment is 10% for the first day it's late, and then 50% for any material after the first day. And I will accept it up until finals week. At finals week, no more late assignment will be accepted. I've got a lot of grading to do during finals week, and I've got a lot to do during finals week, so no more late assignments. So get it turned in, all late assignments, before finals week. Any question about any of that? All right, how do you turn in a late assignment? You need to email it to me in Canvas because Canvas will not allow you to turn in an assignment after the until date, which is usually the same as the due date. But after the until date, you cannot send something late. Any question about that? So you need to email it to me. If you're emailing it to me because you can't turn it into Canvas, it's late. If you can turn it into Canvas, it's actually not late because the until date is still good. Student conduct, we already talked a little bit about this. If I discover plagiarism, the use of another's work without citing credit, you'll lose points and may score a 0 on that assignment. If ever you're using 3 words from someone else, either writing their discussion and web page, whatever, music. If you're using 3 words from something, you should put it in quotes and say where you got it from. Otherwise, it's plagiarism. Even if you put it in your own words, you should not put it in quotes because you're using your own words, but you should put a citation after you um, stated someone else's work. Otherwise, it's plagiarism. Cheating is not allowed. If I discover you cheating on an exam or a quiz, you will get a 0 on that exam. Respondus Monitor will be monitoring you to make sure that you are not cheating during the exam. And if needed, I can review the entire session. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's why I have lockdown browser, Respondus lockdown browser, Respondus monitor to monitor the exams to prevent cheating. All exams are administered closed books, closed note, closed AI. You must sit down at your computer or laptop and take the exam. You cannot leave so that the computer camera cannot see you for an exam, or else the exam will be scored as a 0. You can't read something, you can't answer a phone, you can't use your AI while you're taking the exam. Any questions about any of that? All right, etiquette for Zoom, you can read about that. Important college-wide student information, you can visit that. Suggested study methods. Like most science classes, microbiology is going to be challenging because it's going to introduce a lot of new vocabulary, many new concepts. You're going to have several assignments due at the same time. You may feel stressed, especially in the middle of the term. This is normal because microbiology is a hard class, but many students say that this is one of their most enjoyable classes. To alleviate some of the stress, please understand the commitment you're about to undertake to take microbiology. To be successful, you must set aside sufficient study time. Sufficient will be dependent on individual student needs, but on average, most students will require 2 hours of study time for each hour spent in class. Our class normally requires about 3 hours of lecture plus 4 hours of lab a week. That's 7 hours total per week. Therefore, expect to spend about 14 hours studying for microbiology each week, on top of the 7 hours you're spending um, in class. If external responsibilities prevent you from spending sufficient study time in this class, it may be wise for you to take this class during another quarter when you can have time to set aside for microbiology. Any question about any of that? All right, this class is hard. I'm not going to lie to you about that. Um, but you're not alone in this class. I'm here to help you. In fact, if you were to take microbiology and learn it on your own simply by reading the textbook, you would actually learn the material better than you would if you learned it in the microbiology class. So why in the world do we even teach microbiology? Because you can learn it better without an instructor. The reason is it's simply easier to learn the material with an instructor. Any questions about any of that? It's just the way human nature is. It's easier for students to learn from an instructor than to learn on their own. It's also easier for you to learn if you take notes. It's well known that the best way for someone to learn something is to take notes and then actually to teach it themselves. It's the best way to learn. So please take notes. I will encourage you to take notes. That's why my slide presentation is not currently up. I'm actually making more work for myself because after I have finished chapter 1 and chapter 10 lecture, I will put the slide presentation up and then you can go through them and add anything to your own notes. But I encourage you, I'm really encouraging you to take your own notes because you'll learn the material best if you take your own notes. How much can you learn by taking your own notes? You can actually learn 20% of the material by taking notes. And I know that's not very good, but if you were just to listen to the material, you would only learn 10% of the material. If you read the material, you would also only learn about 10% of the material. So by taking notes, you're doubling that. It's because when you're taking notes, you're actually listening. So it's going in one area of your brain, and then you're translating it to another area of your brain to take the notes. And that's why your learning jumps up to 20%. 20% will not be good enough in this class, obviously. You need to really know this class greater than 70%. You need 70% in order to get a C. So how can you learn the material better than 20%? What do you need to do? Anyone? Can anyone answer?
We need to take notes,
Well, you need to take notes, but what do you need to do with your notes?
teach them.
Well, yeah, review them is what I'm trying to get at. You
Okay.
need to go over your notes many times. And this study has been done always on middle school students. I'm not sure why, but how many times does a student need to repeat something in order for them to actually learn the material? Another way to answer it is when you're learning to play a song for the first time, how many times do you need to repeat it? Or you're talking about an Olympic athlete who's trying to learn a new what's event or skill. How many times do they need to repeat it before they've actually learned it? Anyone have a guess?
3 times?
Oh no, much more than that.
Oh.
Like I said, this is mainly on middle school students, but they need to repeat something 20 times before they actually learn it. We're talking about learning it up to about 100%. Okay. And that's true, like somebody playing the piano, they're learning a new song. Most people, once they play the song, they're not going to remember the song. They're going to need to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And the same thing for an Olympic athlete. They're trying to learn a new event. They just don't do it one time, they do it repeatedly. And it's about 20 times. Now, you guys are adults. You do want to learn this material. So you can learn it quicker than repeating 20 times. But still, you're probably going to need to go over it something like 9 times as well as take notes. So it's 10 or 11 times before you'll learn it close to 100%. Any question about any of that? All right. As I've stated, you can form a study group, and in the study group, there's requirements for what you need to do to get the points. But starting week 2, if you form a study group, either over Zoom or a phone or in person, it has to be live. You can get an extra credit point. You do need to, where is that? There it is. It doesn't need to be live. You can't do it over email. You need to study something you're going to be tested over. You must ask each other questions. Somebody should try and answer it. And then somebody should write up the full names of everyone in the group. Tell me what you studied, when you studied, what you studied, and how long you studied. Only needs to be about 2 sentences. And obviously, you need to state that you've asked each other questions. And then you're going to email that to everyone in the group. And then everyone submits it. And you'll get 1 point of extra credit for a total of 9 points, 1 for each week. Any question about any of that? It does need to be live because if you do it live and you ask a question and you notice someone's a little weak on something, you're likely to ask a follow-up question, which will hone in the fact that the student doesn't know this area, so they need to spend more time on that area, or it will, or an addition, I guess it would be, it will get them to learn an area of their weekend. And that's why I want it to be live, so that it's just not student, but people's, the way their brain is worked, that when you're asking live questions, you tend to focus in on the ones that somebody doesn't know, and that encourages them to learn that area as well as begin to learn that area. Just the way the human brain works. Here's a list of study suggestions. Take on manageable chunks of material. Use concept mapping. We have a concept mapping by hitting that website. Be organized. Use the first 10 to 15 minutes before class to skim the previous class notes and those of the upcoming class. This will help you remember where we left off and will get you in the proper mindset for the incoming class. Come to class, including the lab. Sounds simple, but many instructors, including yours, have noted a strong correlation between attendance and grades. Obviously, quizzes will be on material covered in both the lecture and the lab. Some students skip the lab, and these students frequently struggle in the class. Listen in class. Sounds kind of stupid, but many of us either tune out during the lectures or are so busy taking notes they don't actually listen to what's being discussed. Take sketchy notes, go over them within 24 hours to fill in the details as soon as possible, but within 24 hours. Otherwise, you will lose your short-term memory. That will allow you to listen and think while you're taking notes, and then fill in the notes when you go over the notes. It may even cut down on your study time, filling in the details later. Try active strategies like forming a study group, quizzing study partners, writing mock exam questions. One of the best ways to learn is to teach. And then you can visualize your study technique using concept mapping, and there's a link there for going to concept mapping. Any questions about any of that? All right, let's talk a little bit about the grading. The environmental quiz will be worth 1 point. This is to test your working knowledge of using Respondus Monitor. Plagiarism quiz, 19 points. There's actually 2 quizzes on that, so that should be quizzes. Sorry. You must gain 100% on the plagiarism quiz, or you'll get 0 out of the 100-point infectious disease project. There are 5 quizzes, each worth 75 points, but you get to drop your lowest quiz. So the total quiz points will be 300 points. You must show your complete work area, your environment, around your computer before taking the quiz online. I'll let you read about taking a late quiz. Quizzes are timed and require Respondus Lockdown Browser and Respondus Monitor. No quiz may be taken later than about 48 hours, as the quiz answers become public after that time. The worksheets will be 1 about per lab for a total of 50 points. Each is due during the week of the lab. Lecture worksheets, also about 1 per lecture for a total of 25 points. Also due Saturday of that lab, or lecture, sorry. Identification of the unknown bacteria. This is your unknown report, 75-point lab project. I'll talk more about that when we get closer to the project. The infectious disease research project, also a lab project worth 100 points. You're going to research a pathogenic microorganism and submit a report. More information is contained in a separate package. I'll talk about that when the time is appropriate. Cumulative final exam worth 150 points, mostly multiple choice questions, but a few fill in the blank questions. About 50% of the questions from the cumulative final will be from the last 2 weeks of material which have not been quizzed on, 20% from the lab and the identification of the unknown project, and then the remaining 30% from the earlier lectures. So most of the questions will be on material that you've not been quizzed on. Must take the final within the designated 24-hour period. If you miss the final, there is no makeup. And there we have the total number of points. Environmental quiz worth 1 point. Plagiarism quiz worth 19 points. Quizzes with the 1 drop, the 5th drop, 300 points. Lab assignments, 50 points. Identification of the unknown, 75 points. Infectious disease project, 100 points. Lecture worksheets, 25 points. The final, 150 points, at a total of 720 possible points. Not counting the extra credit, there will be about 20 extra credit points in the class. Everything must be turned in the correct format using the correct APA style. That's for the infectious disease project. The grading scale, if you get greater than 92%, you get an A. Greater than 90%, you get an A minus. Greater than 88%, a B plus. Greater than 82%, a B. Greater than 80%, a B minus. Greater than 78%, a C plus. Greater than 70%, a C. Greater than 60%, a D. And under 60%, an F. You should note the Canvas has a grade, but it's based on a slightly different scale. So the grade letter grade in Canvas may be off. We will follow this grading scheme. Any question about any of that? All right, I've already talked a little bit about question review and written corrections. If you feel I made a mistake, carefully review your material, my material. If after your review you feel I made a mistake or incorrectly graded a question, please request the exact wording of the question, recheck your review, submit a formal written correction. In the written correction, include what question or the sentence was, what you think was wrong, and provide documentation. If you find a mistake and do the above, I will correct everyone's score and give you an extra credit point. On my web page, obviously you just need to tell me where the error is, and then I'll give you the extra credit point. Microscope use, I'll talk about that in the lab. Support for students, I'll let you read about this. I will mention that we do have a tutor for microbiology this term. Come on. I'll let you read about other services for students. Enrollment due dates and deadlines, one-stop assistance. Use of camera on Zoom. Important college-wide student information. Let me state that this is winter term. However, this class is online, so even if Clark College is closed, I will most likely be having class because unless I lose electricity or Clark College Canvas drops, I should be able to have the class, and you should be able to get the class. The exception would be if someone is coming in somewhere to get internet access, in which case they would not be able to get the class, but then they could watch the class on my YouTube website. So, sorry, most of the winter closings will not be affecting us. I'll let you read about non-discrimination policy, school emergency procedures, safety information for students and physicians, words of advice and comfort. Let me talk a little bit about this. Sometimes it seems like your instructors are your enemies. Trust me, we are not. But it is true we must maintain standards so that we can't always accommodate you. However, you should know that we do want you all to succeed, and that one of the greatest joys of teaching is interacting with you, our student, getting to know you and helping you achieve your academic goals. So if you have a problem, a complaint, or a concern, please come and discuss it with me. The earlier the better. Don't let it fester. Things usually just get worse if things fester. I will try my best to help you enjoy the class, be successful, and maybe even have some fun in the class. Any questions about any of that? Meaning I'm here to help you. That's my whole goal as an instructor. Um, any questions about that? All right, lab and safety rules. We'll talk about that in the lab. And then there's our score schedule. Let's briefly talk about lecture one. I always spend too much time on the syllabus. Chapter 1 and 10. the microbial world and you. In Chapter 10, the classification of microorganisms. In Chapter 10, we'll only cover page 272 to 281 of the current version of the textbook, which is the third custom edition for Clark College. But if you have the second custom edition, it's actually page 264 to 272. And I don't know what it is if you have the full textbook. Usually I have the first slide talking about what the chapter is, the major goals and the rough outline. The major goals and rough outline are: one, know the terms. For the terms here, these are a little bit less than the objectives. Let me go and show you the objectives. Remember, you want to learn all of the objectives for the quizzes and the final, which you can find at the start of the study guide. Chapter 1, Microbial World and You. Objectives. So the terms is only the start of the goals. Whoops, wrong one. There it is. So what's a microbe? What's a microorganism? What's a germ? What's a pathogenic parasite? Pathogenic organism? What's a parasitic organism? What's a microbiota? Infectious disease, emerging infectious disease. What's pasteurization? Or what's Koch's postulates? We'll talk about each of these in this lesson. And then we'll talk about a brief history of microbiology, and then we'll talk about the importance of microbes. Starting with that first importance of microbes, here we're looking at the nitrogen cycle. Can I? Yes, blow this up. Here we go. So nitrogen cycle can be stated that it starts in the atmosphere. Some of that nitrogen can be fixed by bacteria and archaea into an organic compounds, such as into an amino acid and an amino in a protein. These organic compounds can be decomposed by bacteria, archaea, and fungi, releasing the nitrogen into ammonia, which can convert with water to ammonium ions. Some of that can go into the soil, be taken up by plants, and they can use ammonia and ammonium, but they don't really like using it. And if you give them too much ammonia or ammonium, it'll actually kill the plant. And then the ammonia or ammonium can be converted by bacteria and archaea into nitrite. That's NO2 minus. Come on, there it goes. NO2 minus nitrite. The nitrite can be converted by bacteria into nitrate, NO3 with a negative charge. Nitrate is the form of nitrogen that all green plants really love. You'll find it the number one, or often close to the number one ingredient in plant fertilizer. It's the form of nitrogen that green plants really love. And then they can take nitrate as well as ammonium and make organic compounds. And then these organic compounds can decompose into nitrate or into ammonia. If it's ammonia, it'll be made into nitrite, nitrite made into nitrate. Nitrate that can be taken up from the soil or seawater in green plants, which then can make organic compounds again. But some of that nitrate can also be made by bacteria and archaea into nitrogen gas. And now we've finished the nitrogen cycle. It's now ended where we began. And then the nitrogen can once again be made into organic compounds by green plants and algae. Any questions about any of that? All right. So that's the importance of the nitrogen cycle, where nitrogen moves from one place in the ecosystem to another, changing form as it moves from one place to another. How important are microbes in this process? Well, wherever we have a red arrow, here, 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 oops, sorry, here, here, and then there, can't show it there because it's not minimizing, but the last step too is a step in the nitrogen cycle that happens because of a microorganism changing the nitrogen from one form to another during a process, and then potentially moving the nitrogen from one place in the ecosystem to another place. So all of these red steps are steps that the nitrogen cycle performs because of a microbe. And without the microbes, you wouldn't get nitrogen converting from one form to another, and you wouldn't get it changing location in the ecosystem from one place, like the atmospheric nitrogen, to organic compounds in a living organism, to ammonia, an ammonium ion being released into the soil or water. Any questions about that? Obviously, it's showing you that the nitrogen cycle is only happening because of the action of microorganisms. So microbes are extremely important in the functioning of the nitrogen cycle. Any question about any of that? All right, if there's no questions, I'm going to end it here. And I'll see you in the lab at 6:30. Any questions? All right. I'll say goodbye. Come on.